Good day, ma'am. This is the output of Group 3 for the Assignment 6, Avoiding Mistakes in Experiments. The task in this assignment is to answer the following questions, such as what mistakes can occur when you are conducting experiments, and what can you do to overcome or avoid these mistakes. Here are the following list of the mistakes and ways of how to avoid and overcome it in conducting experiments. First, failure to carefully examine the literature for similar prior research. One method to avoid making this mistake is to presume that a topic of interest has already been researched and that the first step in the study design process should be to search for, find, and classify what has already been published. It's also important to study the discussion section of similar publications in depth because most academics hypothesize on what needs to be done next in the topical area to progress the science in that section of the paper. Second, failure to critically assess the prior literature. To overcome this, you must critically analyze the literature prior to designing a new research project, and these critical remarks must be included in the introductory section of the final manuscript to justify why the study was needed and what you as a researcher did better than previous researchers. Third, failure to specify the inclusion and exclusion criteria for the subjects. Look at the previous research and use criteria that other researchers have stated if you are unsure how to establish a list of inclusion and exclusion criteria for a particular research issue. Fourth, failure to determine and report the error of measurement methods. A smart researcher might even turn the calibration procedure into a separate study project that leads to a scholarly journal publication. And fifth, failure to specify exact statistical assumptions made in the analysis. Providing statistical test assumption details provides the reader or reviewer the impression that the writers are meticulous and truthful in their descriptions of the research process, whereas omitting such information implies the contrary. Sixth, failure to perform sample size analysis before the study begins. To avoid making this mistake, determine how many subjects are required to attain the necessary minimum power level before starting a research endeavor. It is necessary to understand the nature of the data to be collected in order to do sample size analysis, whether the data is linear or nonlinear. It is also required to have a good assessment of the intervention's effect size, which is referred to as the effect size. Finally, it is critical to comprehend the data collection's unpredictability. Seventh, failure to implement adequate bias control measures. Despite the fact that blinding mechanisms are in place, patients are impressively capable of detecting which group they have been allocated to. Thus, good studies always do blinding checks on a regular basis. 8. Failure to write and stick to a detailed timeline. Good researchers create a timeline plan that includes key milestones along the route, post it on the wall for all to see, and stick to it. 9th, failure to vigorously recruit and retain subjects. Because subject recruiting is frequently a problem in research investigations, there should be many plans in place. Make subject recruitment and retention a priority since well-designed research often fails due to poor subject recruiting and retention methods. 10th, failure to have a detailed, written, and vetted protocol. It is not enough to have a general understanding and agreement that a project will be carried out. A researcher must also gain a full knowledge and agreement on the project specifics, which must be well documented or the project will fail. 11th, failure to examine for normality of data. A researcher should always look at the raw data from the study that is graphically displayed because this shows areas where the data has problems. 12. Failure to report missing data, dropped subjects, and use an intention to treat analysis. If you have to choose between excluding subjects and having a high number of dropouts, always choose the former. 13th, failure to perform and report power calculations. What you have to do is to replicate, replicate, and replicate. And 14th, failure to point out the weakness of own study. It is not a smart idea to hide or obfuscate your blunders in the hopes that no one would notice. Remember that honesty is the best policy also applies here. 15th, failure to understand and use correct scientific language. If you want to be a successful researcher, you must study and comprehend the nuances of the language linked with the scientific process. Only then you will be able to comprehend method limitations. That will be all. Thank you.